the Centerville City Schools Board of Education meeting for Monday, September 23rd, 2024. Ms. Sauber, call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl.
Here.
Dr. Graff.
Yes.
Dr. Rohr.
Yes.
Megan Sparks.
Here.
Mrs. Dernbaugh.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Ms. Sauber, call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes.
Dr. Graff.
Yes.
Dr. Rohr.
Yes.
Megan Sparks.
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbaugh.
Yes. First up, Mr. Wesney is going to introduce a guest speaker for us.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So tonight we do have a guest speaker I'd like to introduce, but first and foremost, just to share with our community and the board, we will have a resolution later on into the agenda to approve one of the library trustees. So the Washington Centerville Public Library is a separate, independent-run entity from Centerville City Schools. The library has its own 7-member policy-making board of trustees. So per the Ohio Revised Code, the Board of Education must appoint the library trustees after they have vetted and selected their candidates. So tonight, I'd like to welcome Jon Monteith to the podium, and he's going to introduce David Faulkner to the group. So thank you for being here with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Is this on? All right. Good evening, and thank you for inviting the library to present tonight. My name is Jon Monteith, and I serve as the fiscal officer of the Washington Centerville Public Library. With me tonight is Mr. David Faulkner. I would like to start with a very brief history of the relationship of our two organizations. In Ohio, there are 7 different types of public libraries, including township, municipal, county, and school district libraries. Of these various library types, school district libraries account for well over half of all the libraries in the state. WCPL grew out of the Centerville Library Club, which was formed in 1899. For 30 years, the Library Club, which then cost 50 cents per member per year, turned over all their books and fixtures to become the Township Public Library, organized as a school district library. In December 1929, the Washington Township Board of Education appointed the first 7 members of the Washington Township Library Board of Trustees. The library was to be supported by a small apportionment of township taxes. In the 95 years since then, there have been 56 people that have served terms as trustees, with the shortest being 5 months and the longest being Celia Elliott's 50 years. There have been some big names in the community that have served as trustees, including Dottie Yeck and C.L. Stingley. Our trustees, in general, are appointed for terms of 7 years. The library is fiscally independent of the school district, and there is no potential for the library to provide a financial benefit or to impose a financial burden on the Board of Education. The Board of Education serves as the taxing authority for the library, but does not receive any of those funds. All money paid for library taxes is remitted directly to the library by the county auditor. Additionally, residents of the school district do not pay any taxes to support the Dayton Metro Library. Since the library was first established in 1929, there has been quite the change in the purpose that the library serves for the community. In those early days, it was focused very heavily on books. Nowadays, you can use our small meeting rooms to do an interview by Zoom. You can find your creative side at Creativity Commons. You can catch up on your favorite shows by checking out one of our Rokus with subscriptions to the most popular streaming services. But of course, the most popular reason for using the library is still books, whether in physical or digital formats. Now that I've given some background information, it is my honor to present our candidate to become the 57th trustee of the Washington Centerville Public Library. At the library's regular meeting held on August 20th, the board unanimously voted to recommend to the Board of Education that Mr. David Faulkner be appointed to fill the unexpired term created by the resignation of Rick Talda. This unexpired term ends on December 31st, 2024, so we'll be back to see you in a couple months. Mr. Faulkner is a Centerville resident and was previously appointed by the Library Board of Trustees to serve on our Financial Advisory Committee. He holds bachelor's degrees in Accounting and Information Systems and Forensic Accounting from Franklin University. He also holds a master's degree in Accounting and Information Systems from Wright State University. He is well versed in governmental accounting and auditing, including nearly 10 years with the Ohio Auditor of State. He is also working hard toward the completion of his CPA exam with an anticipated completion of this year. We feel that Mr. Faulkner is the right candidate to help the library carry out its mission to inspire lifelong enrichment through diverse opportunities for connecting and creating. We would like to invite any questions that you may have about the library, or most importantly, our candidate, Mr. David Faulkner. There was only one this time. Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, excuse me, is public participation. The Board of Education school governance of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on school matters of community interest. Presiding officer of each board meeting at which public participation is permitted shall administer the following rules of the board as printed in the agenda. And it looks like we have several speakers this evening. Mr. Kevin Reynolds is first.
I'm new to this. What do I need to do? Tell you who I am? It's on. Copy. Copy. My name is Kevin Reynolds. I am a resident of Washington Township. I'm here tonight to talk to not you guys, but you guys about supporting the levy as a individual. Copy? All right. I have it prepared because otherwise I'll screw it up. I'm here in support of issue 31 and as a member of this great community and as a concerned Forte parent. More on that in a minute. 6 years ago, we made the decision to move to Centerville because our oldest, when in Wayne Township, was told we don't have anything for you to support his education. He was gifted. He's off the chart. He has since come to Centerville, graduated from Wright State with a mechanical engineering degree at 20. Debt-free, his effort, is now working for Air Force Research Labs out in New Mexico. Just took the job. He's in week 3. That's a testament to what the Centerville School District is capable of producing. I'd also like to then talk about the arts as a Forte parent. If you don't know what Forte is, you need to find out. If you haven't been to their shows, you need to go. They are one of the crown jewels in Centerville's multiple jewels. So many of the programs are nationally recognized or nationally ranked. If you haven't been there, it's amazing. You go and the place is half full. It's the best entertainment dollar you're going to spend anywhere, right? But I'd like to talk about my youngest, Grayson, who's back there, who will speak in a minute. He's a senior this year, so he's going to move on. And he's been in Forte for 3 years. It's very difficult to get in. It's audition only. The only reason why he's there today is that through the programs that are in the middle school and the high school, they found him, they discovered him, they nurtured him. Huge shout out to Miss Stam and Kelly Korpusik for giving so much of themselves to these kids. And I've already gone off script, which I see the time. It's important that we recognize that if this levy does not pass, the arts will be crushed, right? Totally in this environment, and that's bad. We have kids, they may not be athletically gifted, but they're emotionally and they can sing, musically gifted, right? And we need outlets for those kids. We have to see that. So my point is not to brag about my kid. I've already lost my point. But Grayson is just one example of so many of these kids in this school that need these things. So I'm going to go back a few years. I'm old, but there's a saying, right? And it applies locally. Ask not what your community can give you, but what you can give your community. These kids need us now. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
And next up is Mr. Grayson. And you can just state your name, that you're a student.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. My name is Grayson Reynolds. I'm a senior here at the high school. And yeah. I would first like to start off by saying I'm very appreciate you all having me up here to speak. I would like to be up here not only just to speak more on the issue of the levy and issue 31, I believe it's called, but also to provide some perspective, because I understand that students aren't necessarily the first demographic that's attracted to these sorts of events. They don't really think much of it. And I just want to be a voice for something bigger than myself. That was my father just now, Kevin Reynolds, who just spoke. So initially, when I heard about the levy as a student in the arts, I was very worried about the effects that it could have on my life and on the lives of my students after me, because the arts for me and for the students that I'm speaking about are not only an outlet for us to express ourselves and an outlet for us to make music or create other things that just engage with us, things that allow us to be creative overall. But they're also a place for us to find people like us. When we moved here to Centerville, it was very difficult for me to make friends. I'm not a very outgoing person. I'm not a very well-spoken person. I just kind of sit in the corner and hope that things come to me. So having the opportunity not only to express myself in the ways that I wanted to, that weren't necessarily sports or something that was, given a pre-existing notion of being better or more accepting, it was really, really nice to be able to have the support of my students and the support of my peers, who are people just like me, in extending my endeavors into the arts and into just looking further into myself to become more of who I am. I also believe that the arts allow for students to find things that they wouldn't normally find. Obviously, every program here has that opportunity given its own in its own right, but I believe that the outreach that I've been able to get and give to other people, I have been able to fly out to LA for a program called Acapella Academy. Given my director, Miss Korpusik, told me about it, and essentially what that allowed me to do was just expand on not only my arts, but also make connections with people all across the world that if we were still in Waynesville and I would have had no idea about that program. And so I'm just very, very thankful to have what I have, and I'm hopeful that the students after me will also have that opportunity.
Thank you very much. And I would venture to say that you are very well spoken. Next up is Kimberly Rose.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Rose, and I'm one of your neighbors living within the Centerville City School District. 3 years ago, we bet it all on Centerville. We'd spent the last decade of our lives moving wherever the Air Force sent us, happily accepting whatever location was sent our way. Then we became the parents of a little boy with special needs. It became clear we couldn't keep moving every 2 to 3 years. Our son needed stability, so we chose to settle in Ohio. Then we asked ourselves, where do we go from here? We wanted more than just a good school. We wanted a district that prioritized inclusion and fostered kindness and acceptance. It wasn't enough for us that our son just learned to read, write, and multiply. We wanted him to feel loved and celebrated for who he is. So like any parent would, I researched. I read testimonies from special needs parents across all our neighboring districts, some good and some not so good. In the end, there was one district that stood out, Centerville City Schools. Because of that, we bought a home here in 2021, just in time for our son to start at the inclusive preschool program at Primary Village South. Our son is in kindergarten now, and I am amazed at how far he has come. When he started preschool, he was nonverbal and used signs or a picture board to communicate. Now he speaks with a large vocabulary, reads at a first grade level, solves math problems, writes, uses scissors, and so much more. He is excited to go to school every day, and it is a place where he feels loved and included, all thanks to his incredible team of teachers, aides, and therapists at Primary Village South. And while those may seem like small, simple things for a child to learn, they are huge to us. Every skill he gains brings more independence and self-advocacy so that one day he might have a career, drive a car, live independently, and give back to the very community that supported him. And we will only get there with the continued help of the incredible educators at Centerville City Schools. When the last levy failed, Centerville City Schools was forced to cut 5 special education teachers and 13 special education aides. For families like mine, this was heartbreaking. These educators are not just staff, they shape our children's futures. Now our special education students face this school year with 18 fewer staff supporting them, and that loss feels overwhelming. If the levy fails again, our district will have to increase class sizes next school year. With fewer teachers and aides, the exceptional support that Centerville has always provided to our special education students will suffer. This is not just about dollars and cents. It is about ensuring that every child, no matter their challenges, has the opportunity to thrive, grow, and achieve their full potential. By supporting this levy, we are investing in the future of our children, our schools, and our community. By voting for Issue 31, we will ensure that all students, especially those with special needs, continue to have the resources and support they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Doug Haynes.
Hello, good evening. My name is Doug Haynes. I'm a teacher at Tower Heights Middle School, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the teachers, the students, and the community. This evening, I'm speaking to you as a Centerville City school teacher, a Centerville parent, and a Centerville resident. I've always been proud to call myself a Centerville teacher, to be a part of the community, and after being in the community for over 28 years, it's just something that I have just always been proud of, to be able to say I'm a teacher in Centerville. 28 years ago, my wife and I moved to Centerville because of the schools. I wanted to teach in Centerville and one day have our kids attend Centerville City Schools. I think how time has gone by so quickly. Last year, my son graduated from Centerville and is currently attending the University of Cincinnati. My daughter is a sophomore at the high school and is currently running on the varsity cross-country team, which I'm one of the coaches for as well. Both of my kids have benefited from the opportunities the high school offers with sports, clubs, and top-notch academic classes. These opportunities from the district require continued funding. Without the appropriate funding for these programs and support for the students, we will definitely be impacted. I hope the voters will invest in our schools and community. Centerville is a great place to live and a great place to call home. Thank you.
Next up is Brad Shepard.
Good evening, Brad Shepard. I'm a resident of Washington Township, and just wanted to also give my support for Issue 31, and to begin by expressing my gratitude to the board for placing that before voters and having the courage just to be honest about the necessity of this. It's something that our community needs, and definitely something that our children and students need. Like some others, I'm not a native to Centerville or Washington Township. My family moved here 6 years ago. We came from a small town in Missouri, and my wife and I were even one of the reasons we were open to considering positions in our field of work elsewhere was because of our concern for the struggle and honestly failing school district our children were in. And so when we had the opportunity to move to this area and could then choose where to live, we were very intentional about choosing Centerville because we knew it would be the kind of place not just where our students could get a good education, but really could be, learn to be good citizens, be able to holistically in all the different ways that they would be learning. I'm the parent of two sons who are very different in how they learn and how they live in the world, have very different learning needs and abilities. But when we moved here, we were confident that this could be a place where they could both learn and grow. And so we really value the excellent and holistic education that they are receiving alongside their peers, but also the supportive services and various learning and growing opportunities. Our kids, in lots of ways, couldn't be more unalike because one is in the advanced manufacturing block and is kind of finding a home there. The other one's more in the planning for traditional four-year college, taking AP classes, and really thriving there. And one thing I like to celebrate about this school district is that there's so many places for kids to find a home and to find their niche. Alongside that, then, as others have said here too, I can't say enough about the quality of the fine arts program. And I really don't think of it as something that's extra, but really integral to students' learning and student success. Especially at a big high school, we were a little nervous about how our kids would find a place, but they found that place in the band program. And they're learning so many different life lessons than just simply being able to play an instrument. And so my hope is that this levy passes not just for my kids who will be out of the school district in just a couple years, but I want this to be a place where families like mine want to come and want to live, want to be supportive of what's happening here in this school district. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily Zimmer.
My name is Emily Zimmer. I have been a teacher in Centerville for the last 14 years, and I am also here to express my support for the levy. Over the years, I've received many notes, drawings, emails, and artwork from my students, and I am here to share some of their words with you. Frau, you have helped me, and I knew I was going to cry. I'm sorry about that. It's hard for me to share this without getting emotional because these words mean so much to me. So sorry about that. You have helped me in so many ways over the past 3 years. In 6th grade, I was so scared and felt like I couldn't breathe in any of my classes except for yours. Your class has always been a class that I could relax in and has been what's motivated me to keep coming to school even when I was struggling. Another one. Thank you for being the best advisor and German teacher I could ever ask for. I love telling you about my concerts and my life. Dear Frau, thank you so much for the last 3 years. I was very nervous coming into middle school with no German knowledge. Now, thanks to you, I'm prepared for high school. Thanks for helping me grow as a learner and a person. Frau, I can recall my first day of middle school. 7th period was the best part of that day with you in German. Thank you for the effort you put into us every day, the effort we don't always give back. Thank you for the support and care and your part in my Tower Heights journey. Thanks to you, I finally found my voice. I'm able to be strong, independent, and brave, all because of you. I hope that I have made an impact in your life because you surely did mine. It's sad to have to say goodbye, but knowing everything you've done for me doesn't make it as sad. You are the best second mom anyone could ask for. I share this with you because it's my own personal example of what the teachers, the staff, and the administrators in this 5-star district are doing every single day with our students. We're supporting students through change and challenging times, helping them to overcome difficulties and learn from their mistakes. We're pushing them to become deeper thinkers and inspiring them to identify and pursue their passions. We're aiding them in developing their voices, in cultivating their relationships, managing their workload, and in reaching for the stars. In the Centerville City Schools, we guide and inspire our students to become the best versions of themselves. And what we do here is so much more than assigning textbook pages. We are teaching these young humans to become the leaders of tomorrow, and it is critical that we pass Issue 31 in order to continue to inspire and achieve and grow these humans at the level we've become accustomed to. After significant reductions last year, we must meet in the middle to support the schools that support this community. So please vote yes and support our schools in November. Sorry.
Thank you. And Jill Stevens.
Hi, I'm Jill Stevens. I am a resident. I've had 4 kids coming in and out of the schools for the past 20 years. And 20 years ago, there was inclusion, kindness, and acceptance as well. We're an Air Force family, which is why we are in and out. 3 of 4 graduated from here. But I did some research on our levies and learning more from our county auditor. I often hear that the school does not receive more revenue when property values increase, but I found that there is one of 14 levies that is an inside millage at 5.25 mils, and it does bring in extra revenue. I looked, we did spend a couple $100 extra in 2023 for that one. Last Monday, it was good news to hear from our treasurer that our district will be receiving $5 million in additional revenue from the new construction. I confirmed that with the auditor. That will be a big help. But I also watched last month's school board meeting and was surprised to hear from 2 of our beloved crisis intervention specialists, people I know and respect, that we have a mental health crisis in our student population. Surprised to hear more and more students are having panic attacks and can't stay in class. But good to hear there's a Hope Squad and that was developed. But sad to hear our oldest school kids need calm rooms. I understand we can't always ask why, but we can look at ourselves and the focus these days. The focus back to academics and learning, merit in activities. Seems the answer shouldn't be more adults and administrators. I did notice we have a 4th middle school teacher for 3 middle schools. All of humanity has seen tragedies, my family and yours. We don't go to work or to school to talk about sadness, but instead to get our mind off of what makes us sad. Our district recently denied an offer of a LifeWise Academy, a gospel learning elective during school hours for our kids taught by volunteers. Offering the gospel, which has lifted millions out from sadness, depression, and addiction for the past 2,000 years, I think is a missed opportunity to help our students during a mental health crisis. Young families and retirees that I'm talking to cannot afford another additional forever levy on our properties. But with the additional revenue coming in from new builds and some thoughtful cuts and offerings, we can continue to have great schools for the success of our students. My kids sure enjoyed it here. Thank you.
Next up is the legislative report with Mrs. Sparks.
Thank you. There's nothing to report from Columbus, but I was going to touch on the trip that I just took this month. I went to Washington, D.C. with OSBA as a flag delegate for the COASBA conference. There were 32 states they represented. We were advocating for mental health support for K-12 public education. Teacher and Principal Training and Recruitment, Title II, Part A, Childhood Nutrition Programs, Individuals with Disabilities Act, IDEA. At the time when it was passed by the federal government, it was promised to be funded by 40%, and they've never done that. I think right now it's at 16%, so we're asking for them to fulfill their promise to us. Making K-12 public education a priority by increasing its funding. So the Ohio delegates, I believe there's 32 of us. We met with Senator Vance and Senator Brown staff members as a group. And then my partner, Ms. Reinhardt from Dayton Public, and I were able to secure one-on-one meetings with staff members for Representative Turner's office and Senator Brown's office. It was a great experience, and I look forward to going back next year. Thank you.
What is you were a flag representative. Can you explain what that means? Sorry.
So OSBA, Ohio School Board Association, chooses 2 people from each district. So I'm District 10. We're Mike Turner's people to represent. And then we have 1 alternate. So it seems like it's an urban. So Ms. Reinhardt's Dayton Public. I'm suburban. And then Daryl is urban. And he's the alternate. So there's no application. It's just they pick you if they've heard your name and up in Columbus.
How long is your term? Is that?
I think indefinite. So until we say we don't want to do it anymore. So yeah, thank you. I believe it's 16% right now. 16%?
And all the other services that IDE requires of all school districts, let's pay the other 80%.
We do.
Yeah. So this has been going on for a long time. We've dealt with it for years as a board. But we have all these requirements, and don't get me wrong, those requirements are really important for us, especially these children. But provide all those services cost us taxpayers lots of money. The federal government has not increased their funding for that very wonderful idea.
Mm-hmm.
Just another thing that comes up every time we have issues with the levy, get all these mandates from the state or federal government.
Yep, Ms. Reinhardt and I are working on it, so hopefully.
Thank you. Student board reps, is there a report this evening? Okay. Moving on to the treasurer's report with Ms. Sauber.
Good evening, everyone. We talked about all of these things last week at our work session, but I thought it was important that we bring back up this evening to talk about our fiscal year 2025 financial plan. So first, I want to recap and highlight a few things from 2024. Property values increased by 31.3% through the reappraisal process. We have talked for a year about the reappraisal process and how that impacts the taxpayers and how each taxpayer is impacted differently. While the school district looks at it in totality across the entire school district, what everybody's individual tax bill was something different because it's by neighborhood. And so depending on how much your property value went up, you may or may not have had, your taxes might have stayed about the same, they might have increased, and even some people's decreased as well. And so I think that it's important to just highlight that. We did receive about $5 million from the inside millage. We've been forecasting for that $5 million or very close to that $5 million for a while. So for probably almost about 2 years now, we've had that built into our forecast. Because again, that is the one area that we do receive additional revenue through the reappraisal process. We do get some new construction dollars as well. That's a very small amount from one year to the next, but that is additional revenue. And again, that's built into our forecast. We have about 1% a year built in for new construction. In terms of state funding, I don't know if this is actually a highlight, but in terms of state funding, we continue to be on the guarantee for the base funding. The state did give us a little bit of additional categorical funding for things like transportation and preschool programs. But again, that's very specific and very much categorical based, where the base funding, we are solidly and squarely on the guarantee. And unless there are sweeping changes made to the Fair School Funding Plan, I don't see us coming off of the guarantee. We did have higher than expected income from the earnings on our investments. So the money that we do have in the bank, we invest that in what school districts are allowed to invest in, which is pretty limited. CDs and U.S. Treasuries and agencies, we do invest what we can in that, and the interest rates stayed high. Just last week, the rates have started to dip down, and so I anticipate that will start to gradually kind of fall off a little bit for us, but for now, we are earning higher than anticipated earnings on our investments. In November and March, obviously both of those levies that we had on the ballot failed, and so at the time of each of those failures, we took a look at our department spending. We looked at every person that was leaving the district with mid-year resignations, and we did the best that we could to slow the spending and to not replace some staff members, and to try to hold back on our budgets. And so all of those things together ended with a balanced budget where we had a surplus of about $640,000 in fiscal year 24. In the May forecast, we had anticipated that we would deficit spend by about $2.5 million, but all of those things together combined ended the year with a slight surplus. So now to talk a little bit about what we can expect here in fiscal year 25, which began this past July 1st. We did reduce 48 positions, which I think Mr. Wesney will probably mention here in a little while, but we did reduce 48 positions at the start of this 24-25 school year. ESSER funds are now depleted. We had to have all of those funds spent by September 30th of this year, which we were successful in doing. So many of the things like subscriptions and some of our supplies and things that we purchased, some staffing positions that we've had on staff, those all have to come back to the general fund now for us to continue on with those services. We negotiated a 0% to the base for all of our staff for this current school year and next school year, and that's important because that doesn't compound then into future years, and so that really changes our financial plan moving forward. And then I always mention underfunded and unfunded mandates, as Mr. Dahl mentioned earlier. So many great programs and things that we're required to do, but the funding doesn't necessarily always come to us either in full, some not at all, and for other things, we don't get the full funding for those items. One of the examples that I've been using is the science of reading mandate, and so we're required to adopt a new curriculum and train our teachers, and so we received a little bit of funding for that. We received the funding to train our teachers, and we received about half to adopt that curriculum. But again, it's not enough to cover the full scope of what it is that we need. So to look at the numbers here, this is the revenue for FY 25 through 29. These numbers will be converted into the 5-year forecast that you'll approve, or that I will ask you to approve in November, to file the 5-year forecast with the Ohio Department of Education. Just to point out, you can see that the growth in the tax revenue from fiscal year 2023 to fiscal year 2025, that's that full implementation of the reappraisal and the increase inside millage. And again, this has been in our financial projections, so I think it's just important that we point that out. Then on the expense side of things, our expenses do continue to increase, mainly due to inflation. You can see that we had a little dip in 2024 from about 5% increase to a 2.7 or 2.8% increase. But again, the inflation is just steep. You know, the things that we're experiencing with, benefit costs and just the supplies that we're purchasing and subscriptions and all of those things, there's costs associated with those every single year. But from a surplus and deficit standpoint, I've highlighted here this in the red box. Are we deficit spending or are we operating at a surplus? And I left 23 on here because it's important to remember that in 23 we had started deficit spending. All of those economic factors that I mentioned for 24 helped 24, and it brought us in, and I'm calling this the positive surplus. It's closer to a balanced budget. It's not a huge surplus, but we did end up at that $640,000 surplus. But then right back into the deficit spending for the future years. Our revenue stays very, very flat, and our expenses continue to increase with inflation over the years. So the levy that we have on the ballot will be used to address that deficit spending. Mm-hmm. It is. It is. The cash balance percentage, yes, I'm happy to address that. And so at the end of each fiscal year, we do have a cash reserve, and our cash reserve at the end of 2024 was almost $34 million, which is a lot of money, right? And I've said that in every community forum. It is a lot of money, but it's only about 28% of our total expenses for the year. And so when we start to dip into that cash balance as we deficit spend from one year to the next, that goes very, very quickly. And we have to have a cash balance in order to stay off of ODE's radar in terms of them coming in and wanting to know how are we correcting that deficit. So in terms of typical percentages, it varies across the state and across, and I didn't include the graph. Now I wish I would have to show you that, but we are very far below Montgomery County as a whole, the 16 districts in Montgomery County, and I think ranges anywhere from 35 to 45 to even 50%. We're down at 30, and below. And then the state is above that as well, far above that as well. So again, $34 million, it is a lot of money to you and I, and it's hard to think about that, but when you have a $120 million budget, we're a large organization. We employ 1,100 people. We have 8,000 students that come through the doors every day. So it takes a lot to run that business, so to speak. And so we're well below the average, though, in terms of that carryover balance.
And the ESSER funds that you talked about too, those are definitely specific where we had to spend that money. And I know we've got a list of where we spent that money, because I know a lot of people are asking about that. But they could certainly go online, and you printed up multiple times exactly where we spent that money and what it's used for. We couldn't just indiscriminately spend it where we wanted to, correct?
We had to, so the purpose of gosh, you're making me think way back to the purpose of that. Learning recovery, for example, was a big part of the ESSER spending. And so catching kids up from what they missed when everybody was at home for those weeks and months, that was a big part of it. Cleaning, sanitizing, it had to be related to the pandemic. And so we had to be addressing the needs of our students and staff as it was related to the pandemic. And so a lot of what we did was learning recovery. We did some summer school types of things and programs that way. But yes, we do have a document on our website that anybody has access to, and it gives the general for each round of funding that we did receive, because there was a couple different rounds. But we do have that out on our website available for people to look at.
And it was money well spent, because as some of the news stories recently, that our district has gone above. We're past, way past where we were pre-COVID situation in terms of our educational experience, correct? Yeah.
I think that curriculum will probably talk about that tonight when they talk about the state report card, hopefully. So
these are just previews, that's
yes,
all.
Yes, previews. Thank you. So the last thing I have here, just in terms of our finances, I like to continuously bring up the levy cycles. I think of this as a roller coaster. We're up and down and up and down. And this is our cash balance as a percentage of our budget historically all the way back to 2002. And the green arrows represent when we passed additional levies for new money. And that ranges anywhere from 4 to 6 years. And that's very typical for a district like Centerville to have to be back on the ballot every 4 to 6 years. Again, the state funding, the percentage that we receive is very low, about 11% or 12% of our total revenue, and it's frozen. So, you know, we're on a guarantee where that is not growing with inflation. And so that's one of the reasons that we have to continuously come back and ask voters for money. So again, you can see the projected years on the right-hand side. You can see that slope down because as we deficit spend, our cash balance goes down, and that percentage of cash it becomes depleted after time without additional revenue or reductions to programs, one of the two. So I just wanted to touch this evening about the facts about the levy that we have on the ballot. Just as a disclaimer, this information is factual. District personnel are not allowed to advocate for or against the passage of a levy during times in which we're being compensated by the district. So Centerville does have a levy. It says combination. My apologies. I need to update that. It is not a combination levy. We have a levy on the ballot on November 5th of 2024. It's issue 31. It's for 3.9 mils for operating expenses, and it is a continuing levy, but operating expenses only. The levy will generate $11.2 million a year in additional revenue and cost the homeowners about $11.38 per month per $100,000 of value of home value as appraised by the county auditor. There are tools. There are links on our levy page, again, factual information on how you can get that amount for your specific home. And so there's a calculator to be able to do that, and there's also a simulation tab on the auditor's website to be able to go out and find that.
Just to touch on that last one, again, because of the confusion about per $100,000 of appraised value, it's not per $100,000 of what you may be able to sell your house for. It's what it's appraised for, which is typically significantly lower than what your quote value of your house is. So it's important they look at the appraised value, not what the Zillow sale price is.
Yes, that's correct. You have to go to the county auditor's website to look that up. The reappraisal did kind of bring, because of the increases to property value, that did bring those home values up probably a little closer to what they can sell for, but I think homes are still selling for above that. And so you're exactly correct. But definitely the place to look is the county auditor's website. No other sources, no realtor pages, no Zillow, the auditor's website. And so finally, just a reminder about why school districts continue to ask for additional funding. You know, I've talked about both the reasons. House Bill 920, and again, we talked that over and over the last, you go back to almost any one of our board meeting recordings, and we probably touched on the reappraisal process in House Bill 920 and what that does. But it freezes that dollar amount of the voted levies, not the inside millage, the voted levies, which is the majority of our revenue. And so we don't get additional dollars from that when homes are reappraised. And then the other piece is the foundation formula funding from the state of Ohio is frozen. We are on the guarantee. We're not coming off the guarantee without sweeping changes to that process. And I am not anticipating any changes from the state at this point. Any other questions for me? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So again, good evening. Tonight, I just felt like it was important that we share with the board again, the community, our reduction plan, some of the things we have talked about as a district, and really what the board has approved as we move forward in this levy campaign. So again, I know Laura talked about it. It's a little disclaimer. We've shared it all of our presentations. The information tonight is merely factual. We are allowed to not advocate during work time. So this is our disclaimer that we use for all of our board meetings and for our community forums. So tonight, looking at tonight's presentation, I'm really here just to review the proposed reduction plan that the board approved at our special meeting back in September the 3rd. So I'll be sharing some background information as to what led to that decision and obviously go through some of those reduction planning. I'm going to skip a little bit of this section because I know Laura just talked a lot about the fact that we decided to go back in November for a 3.9 mil operating levy that would generate about $11.2 million annually. And this levy is going to be used for operating expenses only, our day-to-day expenses that we have throughout the district. This request follows the voter rejection of two levies back in November of 2023 and March of 2024. After those levy requests failed, we implemented a reduction plan that saved about $3.5 million in our district operating funds. This included cutting 48 staff members, support staff positions, which is about 4% of our total staff, as well as increasing fees and looking at building an athletic field rental cost throughout the district. If we fail the November 24 levy, Centerville schools will not receive any additional money on voted levies in all of calendar year 2025. And so I think it's important for our community to understand that if we fail the November levy, that means no more additional voted levies will come in for the entire calendar year 2025. So we'll have to make more cuts and to help close that gap, as Laura talked a little bit about our deficit spending as we move forward. At our special meeting on September the 3rd, the board approved another round of reductions. If the levy is rejected this November, these reductions would start or begin immediately and continue throughout the 25-26 school year. What's really hard about planning for reductions is we're right in the start of a school year. We're going to talk a little bit about staffing reductions, which makes it really difficult when we started having these conversations. We're back in August. We have a full school year ahead of us and really looking at the following school year because of how this might be impacted as a result of the levy in November. This reduction plan can also be used to provide neutral factual information to the public about our district finances. Some important points to share. There are several points here I need to make before we get into the proposed reductions. We have to maintain core classroom instruction that meet state requirements. That means many of the cuts that you'll see tonight will be outside of the classroom. We said this all along. We want to protect the core in the classroom the best we possibly can. We want to minimize that impact to the classroom, but we all need to realize that any cuts that we make will be a reduction in services. Any cuts that we make will move us closer to state minimums, and we'll talk a little bit about what some of those state minimums will be tonight. And specifically, when we look at transportation, elective course offerings, athletics, and extracurricular activities. I mentioned earlier, it's still very early in the school year. This reduction plan will include more staffing reductions, but we also need to be flexible in how we plan to impose those reductions. You know, like I said before, it's hard enough as it is as a teacher to do the jobs that our teachers are doing day in and day out. And so we want to be cautious as we move forward because we know we'll have more retirements and more resignations in the spring. And so we want to be cautious in how we protect our staff through this reduction plan. Because of this, we are still working through much of our savings and will be realized with the reductions. We may not know some of the savings for a while in some of these areas, but we are taking the time now to look at those areas and doing some studying with those areas to see what it's going to save the district long term. So as far as the reduction plan itself, we are looking at some additional reductions in staffing, support services, or support staff, and with administrative positions. I've said it several times throughout some of the community forums and some of our board meetings. We have not made any reductions in our administrative staff. Our administrative staff tends to have, by state average, we deal with 100 more students per administrator as far as the state average goes in the state of Ohio. We have a lot of potential retirements and resignations, retirements more so from our administrative staff, and so we've held off in those areas from our administrators. But if reductions are needed, we will have to look at all areas of our operation. Obviously, when you're making changes to staffing, whether it's teachers, support staff, or administrators, that will also have an impact on class sizes and potential for those reductions as we move forward. We've also talked about a reduction plan in busing and transportation services, some immediate reductions starting with winter sports or as soon as we possibly can. Would look at all athletic teams, including sanctioned OHSAA teams, clubs, fine arts, extracurricular and co-curricular programs will be required to provide their own transportation to games, events, and performances. We have done a quick study on that based upon our T2 reports with transportation. We have an approximate number of about $320,000 that would be a savings towards the district. So that's one of those areas that we're trying to get more valued numbers to see what those reductions will actually total up to. In addition to that, looking at eliminate athletic shuttle services from middle school to the high school. We provide that shuttle service for a lot of our middle school students to come to the high school for various athletic events. Another part of a reduction plan is looking at busing and transportation services for the 25-26 school year and eliminating busing for CHS, SOP, and non-public high school students. Increase our walk zones for middle school students up to 2 miles. Increase walk zones for K-5 students up to 2 miles. And again, those are the state minimums of the 2 miles. We talked about state minimums earlier and how we're getting closer to some of those state minimums. And I just think it's fair that we share that that's one of those areas where we would meet some of the state minimums. We've already moved to larger collection points for most of our middle to high school, but that will now include all of our students K-12. Eliminate transportation for inter-district transfer students. Eliminate preschool transportation to only students who have a disability, and limit bus transportation to and from primary residents only. And so we've, in the past, have made a lot of exceptions to get students to various places, but with this plan, it would be primarily to and from home. In addition to our reduction plan, we also have talked about athletics and extracurricular co-curricular programs, looking to reduce athletic offerings. As you know, we've had a lot of athletic offerings from 7th grade all the way through our varsity sports. Some of our programs have multiple teams, multiple 7th grade, 8th, 9th, JV varsity teams. We would look at reducing our athletic offerings to 1 team only per level. Eliminate elementary and middle school supplemental contracts. We did a little bit of that, or a lot of that at the high school, but we'll be looking at more additional cuts to the high school supplemental contracts with this plan as well. Reduction in fine arts, reduce the number of remaining 24-25 performances. That would be an immediate reduction as we move forward. Potentially looking at increase to pay to participate in those programs. Looking at the 25-26 school year, reduce or eliminate music and theater performance groups at CHS. And we had some folks tonight talk about Forte. Forte is obviously an excellent group, but we have multiple vocal groups here at the high school, and we would have to consider maybe a reduction to some of those programs. Reduce or eliminate music supplemental contracts or performances in grades K-8. In addition, we talked about our Voyager after school program. We're looking at closing the Voyager program at the end of the 24-25 school year. I've gotten a lot of questions about the Voyager program. Yes, our parents do pay a fee for the program, but there are some hidden costs with that program. All the payroll goes through our treasurer's office. They use our facilities, our liability insurance, workers' comp insurance, and so there's some additional costs with Voyager and having Voyager in our buildings after school. In addition, we talked a lot about contracted services and a reduction plan for what that might look like. I specifically gave a couple examples. One of those examples was looking at our school resource officer contracts to reduce potentially our contract and return back to the 2018-19 staffing levels. It wasn't that long ago. We've added one SRO here at the high school, an additional SRO in the township, but that would be a possibility. Those contracts are on separate time schedules. One, I believe the city expires this summer, and then the township sheriff's office SRO contract expires in December 2026. Also looking at South Community Positive Health contract, we have to provide mental health services for our special education students. We also provide that for our regular education students. So again, it's looking at that contract and determining how we move forward with South Community. We also had some conversations. This kind of ties back to the Voyager program, looking at closing programs earlier in the evening. This gives us an opportunity to save more money on our utilities and time that's being used in the buildings. Gives us also an opportunity to overlap some of our staffing resources with our custodians and potentially reduce some of our custodial positions by closing some of our buildings as we move forward. So I'm going to pause there for a second because I know this is something that we just wanted to share again with the community, the reductions plans that we have in place and approved and we've been talking about now for over a month. Any questions? So again, I just want to invite folks to our community forums. You know, we started our community forums last year. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback. We're trying to provide every opportunity to be transparent about the district, our finances, and where we're trying to go as a district. We've already hosted one event. We have 2 events coming up, actually tomorrow night, 6:00 p.m. at Weller Elementary, then again on Thursday, October 10th at Driscoll. And so again, an opportunity to be out in front, to share with our community our district finances and where we're trying to go with our strategic plan, trying to move the district forward. So with that being said, that's my presentation unless the board has any questions for me. Thank you.
Questions, just a comment real quick. Thank you for going through that. I know that there's been some concern in the community that we're trying to scare people and things like that. The reason for this plan, and I think you said it, you touched on it a little bit at the beginning, the reason for the plan is because anything we say about the levy has to be factual. So the Auditor of State came out with guidelines, and if we want to use the term reduction or talk about any consequences of if the levy doesn't pass, this is the only way for us to be able to do that factually. We're not trying to scare anybody in the community. These are unfortunately the facts of the situation, and that's the reason why we have to do it.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I would just maybe go back to January. You know, we had the same, very similar conversations. We had a phase 1, phase 2 reduction plan. The phase 1, phase 2 reduction plan had to do with the outcome of the March levy campaign. We originally looked at about 41 staff members. You know, we were able to look at 48 staff members in that reduction. That reduction was 17 teachers, certificated staff, and 31 support staff. Again, helped us save about $3.5 million. And so we followed through with that plan. That's a plan that we share with the board. The board approved. We were able to talk about that plan and move forward with that plan up front. And so very similar now, just fast forwarding to September the 23rd, we have a reduction plan in place, and these are things that we'll need to consider and look at if the levy fails in November.
And Ms. Coffey.
Well, good evening. We are here tonight to discuss the state report card and some of the components of the report card. One of the things, we won't be going to a complete deep dive with this. There are literally over 100 pages in the technical documents that explain all the components. We're going to go a little bit into those waters, but not quite as deep as the information that's out there. And so if you are interested, I will say that the state's done a pretty good job of creating an interactive report card, and there's more information than what we will go over tonight, but nevertheless available online for anybody who'd like to go a little deeper than what we're going tonight.
And so to start off, the report card does share an overall rating, and that rating comes currently from 5 different components: achievement, progress, early literacy, graduation, and gap closing. There is one component, college and career readiness, that is not yet rated. And so those components all have a variety of number of measures that go into that overall score. And just a reminder that many of the components here are using the Ohio State test scores or the end of course exam scores and calculating them in different ways in order to achieve the rating. And so we are really thrilled to announce that Centerville has achieved a 5-star rating again this year. And so we are very proud of that and want to go in and explain how we kind of got to that rating.
And just to give it context, there are 607 public schools in the state of Ohio, public school districts, and 68 of those school districts on the report card this year earned a 5-star rating. So that puts you in the 11%-ish range throughout the state, just to give that 5-star rating context.
And so we're going to dig into each of the components so that we can share with you how we scored on those components and a little bit about each one.
So the first component that's up is achievement, and as Ms. Colopy mentioned, this one is shows our students' performance on the state tests that happen in the spring and sometimes throughout the school year. An important couple notes about the achievement piece is that the rating for the achievement is based on what's called the performance index. And so where we used to get information about how our students did simply as whether or not they were proficient or not, the achievement component now looks at a metric called the performance index. And so the performance index has a numerator and a denominator. The numerator in this piece is not only did students, were they proficient, but you can think of it as kind of getting some extra credit if students performed better than proficient in some of the other achievement levels. So as you will see, or you can see on the slide, students who were in the accomplished, advanced, or advanced plus categories earn a little bit more than a 1 on the scoring. That gets totaled up, and that establishes your numerator. The denominator of this component is established by averaging the performance index of the highest 2% of performances in the state, across the state. So you'll see that the maximum district performance index was set this year at 109.3. You take our performance index, divide that by the maximum, and that's where the 87.3%. This year, that translated to 4 stars.
The next component is called progress, and this is where the state takes how students do on the test in 1 year, and there is an equation that they use to estimate how a student would perform the following year, showing a year's worth of growth. And so as you can see on this component, we scored 5 stars, and you can see across that graph that we have some areas where we're showing more growth than others. Obviously, within any kind of metric, there is always room for improvement. And so lots of glowing areas here, but other ones that we are digging into. You can also sometimes see cohorts of kids as you move through this that might have different needs in those different cohorts. The next one we're going to talk about is gap closing, and different than progress, but similar, right? Gap closing takes our different subgroups and looks at how the subgroups are performing compared to the subgroup of all students. And so looking at our students with different ethnicities, we're looking at our students who are gifted, we look at our students with free and reduced lunch, all the different components, and are they growing at the same rate? And it sets goals, and you have to achieve that goal as we're moving towards them performing at the same rate. And so we achieved in gap closing 5 stars.
The next component is graduation, which sometimes can seem simple, but it does have some different pieces to it. So first thing, and this will come up with another component later, is to understand that anything that has to do with kind of the completion of high school is always a year behind. So this information, we had the class of 24 graduate last spring. Many of you were shaking hands and handing out those diplomas. Those students, their information will be represented next year. And so in some way, that information is already kind of etched in stone, but it appears next year. What we're looking at here are our graduation cohorts from basically the class of 23 and 22. And so what graduation simply looks at is whether or not the students who were with us for the majority of their 4 years in high school, there's some technicalities with that, but we'll just say the majority of their 4 years of high school with us, all 4 years, what percentage of them graduated in 4 years, and then they revisit that number the following year and say, how many other students in their 5th year or some time after graduation were we able to get over the line looking at the entire cohort? So you'll see the class of 23, in 4 years, we had 98.1% graduate, and the combined 4-year and then the additional 5-year students in the cohort or the class, what would have been the class of 2022, we had 95.8. I just do want to note really quickly that 98.1 is one of the highest numbers that we've seen in a while. And I do want to give just a shout out to our counselors, our School of Possibilities, and all the people that help our students get across that line. There are a lot of moving pieces when it comes to graduation, and they do a fantastic job.
The next area is early literacy, going from the end back towards the beginning of the school district. But this component is made up of 3 different pieces. And so it is proficiency of students on the 3rd grade OST, the Ohio State test. It is also how many students are promoted to 4th grade, so that part of the 3rd grade reading guarantee, and the component of improving K-3 literacy. And that's each year, the 3rd grade reading guarantee is a K-3 law. And so every year, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, at the beginning of the year, students take a diagnostic assessment that says whether they're on track or not on track. That measures how many students we're getting from not on track to on track at the following year. Again, this is all not the current students that are happening right now, but last year's on track, right? This is the highest we've ever been rated in this measure as well. And so I think that's important to note.
And lastly, we do want to cover the college career, workforce, and military readiness component. It's a mouthful. But this component is not currently being aggregated with the rest of the components for the report card rating. It will be live next year. But there is a lot of information on the state side about this, and it's worth just noting a couple things. One, similar to graduation, this is actually looking at the class of 23. So the rating for next year is kind of already etched in stone with our class of 24. But this is the class of 23, and it's important to note that what this is trying to capture are the number of students in a cohort that meet one of multiple criteria. That includes AP scores, SAT scores, industry credentials, honors diplomas, earning 12 credits of college credit through College Credit Plus or other dual enrollment while in high school, and some work-based learning experiences. And so this is all relatively new, and more schools are contributing more information to this. We have embarked on a lot of partnerships to work on this endeavor. Our Equal Opportunity Schools partnership, which helps with AP participation, our advanced manufacturing program. We are now offering a number of different honors diplomas, College Credit Plus support, work-based learning, the work-based learning coordinator position that's actually funded through our compact with Kettering and Oakwood, are all kind of feeding into this. And I've been looking a little deeper into this, and an analysis of this across the state is pretty interesting, and likely probably a topic for a work session down the road. I think we probably need to look at what's feeding this and how to maybe support this part of our students' experience, and then also the reporting to the state.
And so that was just a brief rundown of the components of the report card that fed into our overall rating of 5 stars. And we just want to take this opportunity to really thank the teachers, the students, the parents, the community, everyone who had a part in helping our students achieve to their fullest potential.
And I would just add, Dr. Rohr, I think you mentioned this. I think those 5 stars are just the culmination of a number of years since the closures and some of the disruptions to learning that our staff continues to do. You'd mentioned some articles that had to do with how our students were growing and progressing. And so in some ways this made sense to us, but it's always good to see, and I think it's indicative of a lot of the work that our staff puts in. Any questions? Thank you to our teachers.
All right, moving on to Treasurer's recommendations. Consider approving the August 2024 financial statements, including the monthly general fund rolling report, monthly cash reconciliation, monthly fund activity report, then and now purchase orders approved by administration, certified by the treasurer and supported by board resolution totaling $56,183.01. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Graff?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mrs. Sternbach?
Yes. Consider approving the minutes of the following Board of Education meetings: August 26, 2024 regular meeting, September 3rd, 2024 special meeting, and September 16th, 2024 work session.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Graff?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mrs. Sternbach?
Yes. Consider approving the fiscal year 2025 certificate of estimated resources totaling $218,225,959.35.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Sauber, could you just
Sure.
give a quick explanation
Yes,
of this
yes.
and the next one?
Yes, this is the revenue side of a county auditor requirement. We're required to send to them our estimated resources for the year. This is all of our funds. So this is not just the general fund. This is all the grants that we receive. It's our permanent improvement fund, our food service fund, all of our student activity accounts, all of the funds that we manage. It's the cash balance at the beginning of the year of all of those funds, plus the revenues that we estimate to come in from those funds. And so it's the whole year, all of the funds that we are in charge of. The second one, the appropriations, is just the expense side of that same thing. Again, county auditor requirement, we're required for audit to file these with county auditor at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Graff?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mrs. Sternbach?
Yes. Consider approving the fiscal year 2025 permanent appropriations by fund totaling $171,411,116.49.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Graff?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mrs. Sternbach?
Yes. Superintendent recommendations. The superintendent recommends the employment, change of employment status, or change of contract status for the certificated personnel listed on Schedule B for the salaries, programs, and on the effective dates given. Superintendent recommends the employment or change of employment status for the support staff personnel listed on Schedule C for the salaries, programs, and on the effective dates given. Superintendent recommends the employment of the personnel listed on Schedules D and D1 for supplemental contracts or extra duty assignments. And the superintendent recommends the granting of leaves of absence for the personnel listed on Schedule E for the reason and on the dates given. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Graff?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mrs. Sternbach?
Yes. Consider approving the following transportation items: the acceptance of transportation responsibilities for the 2024-2025 school year from the districts and for the students listed.
So moved.
Second.
Sure, I can share a little bit. So there's several letters that are in part of our board packet. This is an opportunity for us to work with local school districts in our area, our neighbors, and provide transportation services for our neighboring students. So it's not a gain or a loss towards the district. We have students who are going to these locations, but because these are neighboring residents, it allows us to also provide that transportation services. So it's an agreement between our school district with the other local school districts surrounding us, like Wayne Local, Springboro, Bellbrook, and some of those schools that are surrounding our community.
Would you explain why we don't list the children?
To protect them and their rights and their safety is the biggest reason why we don't mention that for them. But we do have that obviously on file for those students.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Graff?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mrs. Sternbach?
Yes. Consider approving the appointment of David Faulkner to the Washington Centerville Public Library Board of Trustees to a current term expiring in December of 2024.
So moved.
Second.
And this we spoke to earlier at the very beginning of our meeting. Great presentation by the library fiscal officer. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Graff?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mrs. Sternbach?
Yes.
Congratulations. Again.
Board President recommendations, consider a resolution appointing Jon Wesney Superintendent of the Centerville City Schools for a term of 5 years beginning August 1st of 2025 and to approve his contract of employment and authorize the President and Treasurer of the Board to enter into the said contract on behalf of the Board.
So moved.
Second. Call roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Graff?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes. Are there any final comments regarding past or old business from Board of Education?
I have one just comment. I got an article out of the Columbus Dispatch that Maryville Schools is also putting a levy on the ballot after failing for a second time in 2 years. What I found interesting about it was, if you don't know where Marysville is, it's north and west of Columbus. It's where the Honda has its offices and a number of manufacturing facilities. Scott's Miracle Grow is also there. So they have a lot of businesses, unlike we do here in Centerville, that help provide property taxes for the school district. Years ago, and I mentioned this at one of our community meetings last year, there was a tangible personal property tax that they got that was about $9 million a year from the tax. When the legislature eliminated the personal property tax, they started reducing what they received, like they did Centerville. We received a lot less than that. But they were still getting it until a year ago, but as a reduced amount. So this is another school district that had the same kind of issues that we had. They've lost levies, and they're taking the same kind of action that Centerville is taking. And the reason I wanted to bring this up, because as has been mentioned already, between people that's been on the board and community members, that we're trying to scare the public into believing we have to do this. Marysville is doing exactly the same thing of giving right, straight information out, correct information about what's going to happen. They're going to reduce 3 art positions at the elementary school, 3 music positions at the elementary schools. They're going to reduce 1 position at the intermediate school in art, 1 position in music at the intermediate schools, elimination of technology at another position, elimination of STEM, 1 position, reduction of PE education. They're going to eliminate core content elective courses, 5.5 positions, Fab Lab, 1 position, building aid, 1 position, elimination of music, drama, cat's eye, mock trial, technology, supplements, and increase all fees for extracurricular activities. So this is not a game. There's nothing we're trying to do to force people to do things. This is what's happened to school districts across this state. We've been lucky not to have as many of these. We've been lucky over the years of getting a lot of support from our school district. So we don't like doing this as a board, recommending these type of things. The administration doesn't like doing it, but it's just a reality of where we are. So I just wanted to bring that up so that the other places have the exact same issues we are. And there are much more than just Maryville as well. Thank you.
Do we talk or decide about changing the work session for next month?
I thought we were going to move it to Tuesday.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Is that, are we going to do this so
We can finalize that. I'm fine with that. I don't know if there was any conflict with dates.
I checked my calendar. I'm fine.
What date is that?
It's Tuesday. I think it's the 15th of October.
After Columbus Day, whatever the Tuesday is after Columbus Day.
Instead of the 20.
All right, it'll be the 15th instead of the 21st.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
And then the work session will remain on the 28th.
The regular.
Regular
The
meeting.
regular meeting, excuse me,
Yes.
will
Right.
remain on the 28th, yes.
Yep.
Any other comments? All right. Pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1, I hereby move that the board adjourn to executive session to consider the discipline, investigation, and complaints against the public employee or employees. No other business will be conducted except to come out of executive session to adjourn. May I have a motion? Second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Graff?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes. Thank you all for coming this evening.